All right. Had a couple of major failures, technology failures, just before going live. It's amazing how much I rely on like this. I think we all, like how much we all rely on this chain of fickle technology. So many links in that chain that are weak, could easily fail. And then where do we find ourselves? We find ourselves having to restart our computer in order to be able to do a live stream. In the grand scheme of things, not such a terrible. What if I had a pacemaker, right? Stakes could be much higher. Look what I got for the OGs tonight, by the way. I have this camera for a reason, but figured I would indulge. I know I'm addicted. I don't care. So I was scooting around. Some people go on jogs or walks or hikes. I'm one of those annoying people who goes on scoots with my AirPods in translucent mode. That's going to help if it's an electric car bearing down on me. I was listening to a couple of things. I was re-listening to The Passenger and Stella Maris, which are Cormac McCarthy's last two novels before he died. Beginning of the month. And the other thing I was listening to was Paul Tremblay's new book. Paul Tremblay was the author of the book Cabin at the End of the World, which was adapted into a movie by M. Night Shyamalan called Knock at the Cabin. I thought the movie was okay. The book was much better. I don't think it's Paul Tremblay's best book. I think if you've never read a Paul Tremblay book, read A Head Full of Ghosts, and you're getting the cream of the crop right there. Or Growing Things, or something like that. Anyway, his new book, The Beast That You Are, which is a collection of short stories, one of his frequent milieus, the horror short story. And there's a couple in there that are very philosophical in nature. And it got me thinking, like, there are just so many things. It's a technical term. There are so many things in this world right now that exist that are terrifying, that you might get a little bit of cognitive overload. You might not be able to keep track of all of them in your head. And I wouldn't want that to happen. I wouldn't want you to get to a point where it's like, well, there's so many things to be horrified about that I'm forgetting things. Let's not do that. Let's be sure that we keep all of our sources of existential dread right at hand. And what better way to do that than with a handy-dandy tier list, right? What more relaxing exercise could you think of on a Friday night than to think about all the horrors this world has wrought, whether they affect you or not, right? I'm aiming for the ones that affect me, really. By the way, hello, hi, Juan and B-Bear and Lexi, and Amy, Edward. That's it. How do you all? Brian, Brian is wishing me a happy birthday, and I think, not really sure. Lexi is, I'm confused. Confused what's going on here. But anyway, El Pedrito, yoke, El Pedrito. We get in the fractal illusion. That's the whole philosophy. Right. Okay. Well, I'm not on the level that you are. I am on the level of things like starvation and poverty. Lights Incorporated, high, yoke, high. Lights Incorporated. This is, I'm getting a bit of existential dread from your PFP. Oh, Lexi, it's your birthday today. Happy birthday, Lexi. Is that riddle? What do men do only once in their life? And women do every year, starting at the age of 29. It's that old-timey misogynistic humor. It's hurtful and it's not clever. So it's the double whammy of crap. So what I did was I went through my, there's going to be stuff left out, but since this is a live stream, maybe we can incorporate some things from people, right? But ultimately, like, right, don't get to, hey, Jeff, how are you doing? Hope y'all enjoyed, Philadelphia was a long time ago now, wasn't it? Did you get to go to the Muter? Emily. So maybe we can influence what goes on this list here. D, you're a 29-year-old. Do you identify as a man or a woman or something else? Because the joke there is, right, like if you identify as a woman, you just keep turning 29 over and over again. Humor. All right, let's get to the fun stuff here. So the fun stuff being existential dread. KJ, great. I'm glad KJ is here because I'd be hard pressed to get any kind of holistic idea of what constitutes existential dread without Lexi. I'm sorry, without KJ. Not that I'm sure Lexi is also quite a downer, but not the downer that KJ is. I'm joking. So what I did was I went through all the things that I could think of, and I tried to keep these using the NOMA structure, so the non-overlapping magistra, which is a term popularized by Stephen Jay Gould. Because there are so many sources of suffering that overlap. Hi, Ava. It's always good to see you. There's so many that overlap, so that there's going to be like a little bit of simplification going on here, right? There's going to be probably like some stuff left out, but that's fine. I did a YouTube search for existential dread tier list, and there wasn't one, and I was disappointed. So, doing one. Juan, no call-ins. I'm not set up for call-ins. Kind of need a break from call-ins for a decade or so, something like that. But that way you just get to hear me talk endlessly, over and over and over and over. Little birdie 504. Hello, long time no see. I don't know who you are, but I'll assume that you're somebody who's been here before. B-Bear, I don't know. I'm just doing this informally on my own. No connection to anybody. So I started trying to categorize this stuff. And of course, the thing you immediately realize once you start listing these sources of existential dread out is they pretty much all are subsets of fear, right? Like, okay, fear of death, fear of, let's put a, how can I do this? Fear of humiliation, that's a person laughing. There's, fear of disease, all these kinds of things, right? So I wanted to be sure to extract the big uns and the ones that can be given some kind of distinct boundaries. But like I said, there's going to be like some overlap. There's going to be some redundancy to some extent, right? And, we all, first of all, I don't buy, I'm just going to like lay down a couple of my personal sort of philosophies when it comes to this. I don't buy that people are not afraid of death, right? People may get to the point where the thought of life is more frightening than the thought of death. And some of it is kind of like, just like, well, what does being frightened mean, right? But my personal opinion is once you are cognizant enough to be aware of what death is and the finality of it and the extent of it, the best you can do is mitigate the fear as best you can. And some people, like, there's different ways you do that. Like, be surprised. I mean, me, you wouldn't be surprised. Right? Like, I often like wondered or talked to people because I have an anecdote about it. It's therefore credible. Like asking somebody, like, what's the best way to die? If you could somehow remove the fear, and yes, I did watch Midsummer comparatively recently again. So of course that's also in my head. If you could remove the idea of suffering, foreknowledge, any sort of, well, it's suffering, right? Pain, or, if you could remove, here's what I think. I think if you could give somebody the option to not have existed, press a button and you will not have existed. That means that's different than dying, right? A lot of people would press that button. It means you did not exist. You never existed. It erases all effects that you had on the timeline of the universe. Let's dig. It's very compelling, right? What is it? Ergoticism? Forgetting the word for when you're, no, that's ergodic literature. I'm thinking. There's a word for this, like the call of the void, but there's a word for it. Maybe, Amy, you might know it. I want to say it begins with an E. where it's sort of the allure of death is, and its power is alluring because power is alluring, therefore, right? Amy, yeah. So I was thinking about this and thinking about the things that make death so terrifying, and part of it is definitely social. Part of it is its inevitability, and trying to sort of separate out these things into distinct categories that we could then put in some sort of a tier list. So no, it's not Thanatos. Amy, it's just it's the desire to engage in activities that you know might kill you. Not the desire; it's the compulsion to do that. Tom Cruise has it, right? So I did what anyone would do in this situation, and I started a spreadsheet, and this is where we're gonna start. And I will share it with you all here. Let's see, be sure this works. Okay, I don't have my program window. Wait a second, let me go back before doing this. I gotta have my program window so I can actually see what you all are seeing as well. And I don't have that right now. Window program. Oh, popped it on one of my other monitors. No, you go down there. Okay, now let's go back. All right, here we are. Thank you, Google Sheets. So you could see, right, I've separated this into a few areas. Causes, and then the enclosing groups, and then the subgroups, subsets, I really should have called them. And then at the final right, the final column there is what I arrived at as the tier list entry for that group. Because obviously death encompasses a lot, right? Sudden death, just kind of a thunderclap heart attack, the idea of like lingering death, which of course there's overlap with disease, right? Some particularly pernicious kinds of disease, dementia, cancer, pretty horrifying stuff, right? Then there's the sort of abstraction, the conceptual idea of death, which is terrifying in and of itself. And you have, like, I feel like you have these fears in a few different stages, right? You have them, well, first of all, you're the immortal child, right? You don't think about death at all. You, at some point in your development, prepubescence for most, develop a healthy fear and or respect of death. Then you go into sort of like a rebellious phase where you're sort of trying to scream, shouting into the darkness, and masquerading that as like a lack of fear, when really it's really emblematic of the fear. Then you get to the point where you start to evaluate the course of your life, and you see that you maybe are approaching the point where you've lived more of your life than you have left to live. And then, of course, there is the stage where you are on the other end of that slope, and you are rushing towards your demise in ever-increasing dark carousel speed. And then if you get any of these illnesses or any of these sort of unfortunate sort of things that force you into a position of reconciling with your immediate death, and that's also another category. Hey, Maddie. Hey, oh, not just Maddie. So death, yeah, falls into those. But I felt like we could kind of encompass those in just sudden death and slow death, right? So sudden death covers all the heart attack, stroke, aneurysm, dying in your sleep, hit by a car. Oh, wait, actually, hold off on that. Oh, Maddie, you graduated. Congratulations. That's one more step. on this road of life, which ends inevitably at the grave. Enjoy it while you can. Congratulations. And then we move into humiliation, which some are going to say is like, well, that's far less horrifying than death, but to some, it's definitely not. Right? We're talking about humiliation of not being able to take care of yourself, the humiliation that goes along with a complete loss of dignity, the humiliation of not being sufficient for supplying for your family, or being a breadwinner, or being a burden on your family, or your loved ones. So one also thing that became really clear, right, when you're doing this, and of course everybody knows this, but this sort of highlights that idea, is the moment is you, happy little fella, going through life, right? Something bad happens, hits you. You're no longer happy. If you're able to some extent navigate through life, be nice and agile, maybe you can retain that happiness for more time than you are unhappy. However, the moment that you have connections, right, and this is the double-edged sword of connections, you become far less agile, right? You're kind of more like this. And any one of those things hits any part of this web, and of course it gets transported to you as well. And bam, you're sad. Oh, I didn't realize. Sorry, I should have had this. Should have gone back to the main here. So the moment you gain connections, you gain strength, right? But you also gain vulnerability. And it's also, I mean, it's not a foregone conclusion that like people want to know about their death or don't want to know about their death. Also, I apologize for my hands. Again, I'm growing my nails for playing guitar, and it's gross. Do you want to know? I mean, what did, here we go, right? Like, what did the Cyclopses ask for? Right? They wanted the ability to see the future, which Hades gave them the ability to see. You guessed it. They got to see the date of their own death, and all it cost them was an eye. So this whole idea that, you know, everybody, like it's never going to be one size fits all, right? Some people would much prefer to have the time to get their affairs in order, deal with their loved ones, etc., before they die. Others would much rather they just kind of wink out of existence, right? So anyway, back to the sheet. Lexi, did I accidentally draw something, or did I just leave something up? I don't know. That is terrible. Although it's innocuous enough that I would think that you know, people would get over it and think that was kind of funny. So humiliation, I think, is probably more of let's see, wait a second. If I zoom here, it's going to zoom the whole thing, isn't it? It's actually not zooming anything. I think humiliation is actually pretty significant. The idea of dying with dignity is a real thing. Right? Pain, of course, pain to some extent equates with suffering. And I'm sure you all notice, but right, fear covers all of these, right? And it kind of breaks down as you go down over to the right. There's physical pain, right? Pretty obvious what physical pain is. Mental pain is any kind of suffering. You can open yourself up to more suffering by opening yourself up to more connections. Opening yourself up to more connections also opens you up to more joy. Essentially, the broader, you can't increase the heights of joy without increasing the depths of despair. So pain, failure, maybe you could put that in with humiliation. But I felt like it was enough to warrant its own, maybe slightly overlapping category. So now we get into a few of the more, maybe, I don't know, they're more abstract, I suppose, but not any less real, right? The idea of having a lack of purpose. You have a lack of purpose in your life. That could be societal, or it could be universal. And by universal, I don't mean shared by all. I mean literally universal. It's in like there is no purpose to the universe. That in itself is an incredibly frightening idea. Excuse me. So yeah, so we're either like, you don't have a job. Like this is not the top 5 list of the most stressful things that can happen to you. Divorce, losing your job. Like this is existential dread. This is not, this shit is stressing me out, right? So yeah, lack of purpose, societal and universal, which I threw that into ennui, mostly because I wanted to use the word ennui there. Now, lack of control also is a pretty different things, right? Societal or universal. You lack control in the immediate tactical things that you can or cannot do in your life, or the things you can or cannot accomplish, which of course feed into humiliation, failure, lack of purpose. And then there's the idea that there's no such thing as free will, right? And so the lack of control on a universal level, to some people, that's reassuring. I find it a bit horrifying. Take your pick. Now, I put ennui here in depression. That's a mistake. Although I'm going to leave it, right? So self-harm and self-hate leading to depression. Of course, like these are all interlinked, right? So depression can be caused by a lack of purpose, can be caused by panic, it can be caused by failure, it can be caused by physiological, it can be caused by not enough serotonin. A lot of avenues by which depression can come to a person. And the reason I didn't want to throw everything into sudden death or slow death is because there's also this idea of avoidable death. And so, and this, one of the reasons I almost didn't want to include this at all, because it feels glib to me. As a person living in the United States of some means, to just make this sort of nod in a tier list to something like the effects of poverty on 2/3 of the world's population, caused in no small part by the other third. But it's there, avoidable death. Those fears tend to be, at least, in situations like mine, they tend to be more confined and compartmentalizable in that I don't go to bed worrying about the possibility of getting hit by a car the next day. Now, I might go to bed worried about a plane that I need to get on the next day. I might go to bed worried about that. El Pedrito, what do you say about the fact that the discussion of depression and fear is essentially their rebellion? How drug addicts can snap when they remember drugs. You're saying that whose rebellion? Are you saying that discussing depression and fear is the way that you form a mental bulwark against those things? I'm not sure, because I'm not sure how that relates to the next sentence. How drug addicts can snap when they remember drugs. I do think that, right, that this goes back to the hunter at the water hole for talking about distracting ourselves from these things that we have no power to change. But I'm not sure if that's what you're referring to. Ava, I think ennui is used it's a pretty common, it's becoming more common. That probably says something about the state of our society, right? But of course, like, who doesn't love to use a French word when they can? So I put avoidable death there. It's more of a problem it really comes, like, it does kind of come down to poverty, because how you can isolate yourself from being in those dangerous situations largely comes down to, a lot of it comes down to just the circumstances of your birth, roll of the dice, the unfortunate conclusion of being born on the wrong side of the rich and powerful. Right? Man, that Coke is good. And then we get into the religious aspect of it. I have a little bit of trouble with this because, oh my God, I'm going to say it. I'm an atheist. It doesn't mean that I like Richard Dawkins or Ricky Gervais. It's not something that I hold over anybody if they choose to believe in God, unless they do so in such a way that it infringes on the rights of others. I'm looking at you, Catholic Church. I would think a car accident does count as avoidable death. Yes. But if you do believe in God, then you might live in fear of reprisal from said God. Perhaps you're not you're not walking the narrow way, is I believe how they would say it. So, all possible. And then fear of loss kind of ties back to my awesome drawing I made earlier. As you branch out in life and your connections become more and more labyrinthine and difficult to disentangle yourself from, what happens to one part of that net affects all. And the same thing that gives strength gives vulnerability. So that's a fear too. So those are the 10 or 11. 11. Existential, they're not really crises, but thoughts of an existential nature that I thought we would categorize here tonight. So let's go ahead and do that. And this is definitely where I need help, right? So shout out if you know the answer. Damned if I do. And this is also going to do some weird stuff, I think, because I'm pretty sure that Ecamm is not a big fan of knowing when. Let's see, can I just make this? You'll notice I'm in the Photoshop beta, which gives me access to the generative fill. Do you want to see the beauty that generative fill can give you? Here, let's just try it right here. Let's do some generative fill. Let's do a Cyclops. Sad at the fact that he knows when he is going to die. It may not allow that. Nope. Generated images were removed because they... Okay. Let's try again. Cyclops sad at a cemetery. All right. Let's see. Graveyard. Looking at his grave. See what it does with that. If it accepts it. What the fuck is that? Looks more like Janice. And like what kind of body is that? And then these are the alternatives. Just a side view of a skull. The wonders of AI, ladies and gentlemen. How far we've come. Look at this. Absolutely beautiful. Let's maybe try something a little simpler. The universe imploding. I bet you it's not going to let me do that. Ooh, actually, that's something there. I'm liking that. That's okay. That not as good. Not as good. I'm sure this is stolen from somebody and they just did a polar coordinates to some kind of cloud image or whatever, but that's not too bad. I'll keep that. I'm gonna hide it, but gonna have to bust out my panel here. Okay. So we have sudden death. We have slow death. We have disease, pain, failure. I want you all to notice my restraint at using Jordan Peterson's image only once, because I do feel like he could have fit for a lot of these, right? Depression, lack of control, disease. Could have just put all Jordan Peterson there, but that would have made things more difficult. So failure, I figured failure is where he fit best. Ennui, lack of control, that's a derailed train. Doesn't really read, does it? Depression, avoidable death, I blurred that out quite a bit, but I'm sure you know the image that's being referred to there. And then the last one is, of course, Terry Gilliam's vengeful God. So these things can haunt you at all the moments. They can haunt you during every waking moment, which means at least you get respite in your dreams. Intermittent panicked gasps for air. You get some breaks. Maybe they're just a thief of joy. You know, they put a limiter on what you can feel. Or they're just a dull yet persistent ache. Figured those were thematically appropriate tiers for what are essentially SABCD. So, sudden death. Actually, you know what? No, what? Let's go backwards. Because sudden death is is obvious. We need to move this out of the way. The beta of the new Photoshop is actually, I'm pretty impressed by it. And what you saw here is not a good indicator of the kind of stuff you can do with it. Oh, good night, Edward. Thank you for hanging out. So, a vengeful God. So here's where we're immediately going to run into this problem. For me, that's not even a dull ache because I don't believe in God, right? So my immediate reaction there is to put it in a dull ache. But if I were someone who believed in God, that would be arguably the most important thing, the only thing that I cared about, right? So maybe with that in mind, we could put that in intermittent panic gasps for air. See that little, how it kind of flipped there because it doesn't really know. Oh, I think maybe if I close this window, it'll stop doing that. Let's see if that works. Did that work? No, didn't work. Closed a window for nothing. I think that's fair. Please chime in if you don't think that that's fair. Avoidable death. So again, like for me, right, it feels a little glib to rate this at all. But within the context of my life, this is stuff that I fear. I do have this fear occasionally, and it's not necessarily like localized to just when I'm on the verge of doing something potentially dangerous or hazardous. It's always there. But I would say that it's probably a dull ache, right? I think that's fair. Stig Erickson. This is, yeah, Jeff, I mean, a lot of this stuff is going to be, your mileage may vary. Depression. I don't need to say much about it. It haunts every waking moment, I think. My dreams are not always, depressed, but I probably am depressed most of the time. And you'll notice like there's some things here that aren't represented, or at least aren't explicitly represented. Things like climate change, right? One's thoughts about the future of the species beyond one's own life. Kind of playing a selfish game here tonight. Now, lack of control. I'm ambivalent about this for the reasons I stated earlier. I do not believe in free will as a sort of philosophical stance, right? Which is not to say that it's not the same as saying I believe in predestiny. But I do think that essentially, like, we're looking at systems that become complex enough that you can no longer determine their outcome with any sort of reliability. However, that's only because these systems investigating those systems themselves are not complex enough. And that if you could, right? I know that is a tautology, but I think it's a true one. So you could take solace in lack of control, or it could be the most horrifying thing. For me, lack of control sort of, I guess it blunts the edge of everything, which sort of is an immediate, right, thief of joy, right? All right, now, ennui. and how that is distinct, at least in a way, from generalized depression. So ennui would be the sort of inability to get excited and or motivated by things, maybe because of depression. But I think you can have ennui without being depressed, and obviously you can be depressed without having ennui. You can be depressed and manic. But that fear for me, I don't know. Lexi, lack of control haunts every waking moment for you? Lack of control haunts every waking moment. My guess there is that maybe it's not, I don't want to make any assumptions, right? But parents, I think, are probably more prone to fearing lack of control or being sort of constantly beset by this feeling of a lack of control than non-parents. Talking about that net there, but also there's an implied you should be controlling things for your children, right? And that also rolls into like a bunch of the others, right? It rolls into failure, right? B-Bear, you would live on because you might be of help to someone in need. You don't think you would nope yourself even if you were really depressed. So I think what you're talking about there is utilitarianism. Maddie, lack of control has always been tough. All right, well, I don't want to, okay, let's, why don't we move lack of control up one to intermittent panicked gasps for air. This, Maddie, this is, I don't know what to say about that. That is crazy. Rowan, everything. There's not one thing in the universe that is within your control. Oh, B-Bear, you're talking about the apocalypse. Lexi, you hate having to rely on others, especially when they are less reliable. Yep. And this happened to you before you were a parent. Okay, yeah. Did it intensify when you became a parent? Jeff, for you, the lack of the control was lack of control over your life. Yeah. Little birdie, you could get over your fear of a vengeful God if you had control? Wouldn't a lack of control sort of give you a get out of jail free card when faced with a vengeful God? If it wasn't in your control, no, actually that's falling back on that argument about like, well, if there's, if you really believe, if you honestly believe that everything is predestined, then what's stopping you from just going out and doing whatever the hell you want? Nothing is stopping me from going out and doing whatever the hell I want, except for me. I get hung up on when I'm trying to discuss philosophy with people, particularly when we're talking about the differences between free will, lack of control, the illusion of choice, etc., right? Every day when you wake up, 10,000 incredibly, really, really, really extraordinary and unlikely things are going to happen to you. Every day. Some just wacko crazy thing that you could never bet money on in a million years is going to happen to you. You just don't know what it is. And if you knew what it was and you could construct some sort of story around how or why it was significant, then you could be, a charlatan. Very successful charlatan. Well, B-Bear, I would consider not noping yourself regardless. It's largely because of its irreversibility. And if you feel like you can make a positive change in the world, then why not become a negative utilitarianist and use your life to minimize suffering in others, right? Jeff, you were going through a divorce and leaving Catholicism at the same time? It was when you realized you were in control that it was liberating. So that's why I'm talking about the idea of saying that there is no such thing as free will. It's not the same as saying you might as well not do anything because it's already all laid out for you. They're not the same. And they're not, they are congruent with one another. You can say, I don't believe in free will, and yet every day you get up and you try and do something. You try and make a change in your life. You try and take control of your life. The only thing that you have no free will means is if we were complex enough, or we had some mechanism that was complex enough to see what was driving all of that and to get down to the quantum level, right? Or I guess at the quantum level, at that point, probability falls apart. You have the double slit experiment sort of making a mess of everything. Maybe that's what Cat didn't know about that. Jeff, you learned you were in control of your own happiness. That's there's a bit of truth to that. Laura, what happens when someone gets tired of trying? Can you be more specific? Tired of trying what? Tired of trying to sort of plaster a smile on your face? Go through the motions? At that point, you could become a bit more hedonistic. I have a weird personal philosophy when it comes to things like the sanctity of life. And I don't think that, I'm going to look this up. Hold on. Let me come back. Let me just for a moment come back here. I have a weird philosophy when it comes to how I conduct my life. I got to find this word. It's going to be hard to find. Why do I care about the word? I don't have a lot of reverence for life, just for life's sake. I certainly don't have a lot of reverence for like human life over the lives of non-humans. Oh, indigo. Wow. It was good to see you, Indigo. It's been a while. Laura, you've been trying very hard in your life since last December. In January, a close family member died. You stray further away from hope every day. Don't feel like you believe in things anymore. I'm no therapist. Right. And I would feel like such a hypocrite to sit here and say something like, this too shall pass. But it is true Every day you wake up, and an innumerable number of things that are highly, highly improbable will happen to you. I don't know if that gives solace or not. I'm sorry about a close family member dying. That's terrible. And I get the idea of like losing hope, losing belief, and the ennui, right, that comes from sort of feeling like it doesn't matter anymore, and what you do doesn't matter anymore. And even if like your dreams came true, that wouldn't matter, right? It's largely defined by the state of mind in which you approach it. I don't know that there is an easy way out of that. You know, I certainly have been told in the past, like one of the ways to get yourself out of a situation like that essentially gets distilled down to fake it till you make it. I don't know if that's good advice. But you're right. Like everybody has like, there is a line like this far and no farther. This far and no further. And if you reach that point, I don't know what to tell you, right? Like that is, you should probably seek professional help, obviously. Right? We hope that goes without saying. But I mean, I've been in therapy since second grade or something like that. And I don't know how much that's helped me. And I think in some ways it's probably hurt me. Because I've become so introspective, sort of spending my entire life looking at what I do and the reasons why I do things, etc. There were times when it served me well, but there were times when I was shooting myself in the foot. Like there were times where it's like, no, you would have been better off just kind of like having a good time, right? Even if you didn't think you wanted to. It's like that. I don't want to go out. I don't want to go out. And you go out and you actually end up enjoying yourself. Or I don't want to do this thing. This is going to be a nightmare. It's like you have to sort of open yourself up to those possibilities. You have to at least give the world, and you probably already did this, Laura, so I'm not talking to you specifically, right? But you have to give the world a chance to give you a chance. If you just shut yourself off from everything, then it doesn't matter what you have to offer, right? Like nothing's ever going to find you. You need to put yourself in a position where you can be found. I mean, it's essentially like we're all on desert islands. Some of us are shooting up flares. Some of us don't have flare guns. Some of us are getting the shits from eating coconuts. Some of us are, drawing on putting bloody handprints on volleyballs. Not getting endorsed by Wilson. Oh, well, that's actually nice to hear, Laura, but, it is, that is tenuous, right? I guess I just feel like being glib about it is not, it's not helpful. And the truth is, like, I'm in the situation where, like, there are definitely times where I feel like, well, yes, I'm going to continue to exist because I have obligations, and I have been successfully, whether you call it, whether it's a boondoggle, whether it is a hamster wheel, whatever it is, the biological imperative to reproduce and to love that which you have reproduced is an effective carrot and an effective stick, all in one. It's a stick in it. It's a stick it. does it all. And, that's not enough for everybody. It was not enough for my dad, right? So, you do what you can, and you can't do any more. Yeah, Indigo, or something. Or something. Okay, let's get back to this. See if this is going to... Okay. Here we go. Yes, we're back. For our existential dread. Okay, so we have depression haunting every waking moment. We can still get escape in sleep. A vengeful God. That was a compromise there, because for me that was a dull ache. But I want to recognize that for some people that is the end all be all. That is the alpha and the omega, literally, right? Well, not literally, but that is the alpha and the omega. No, see, I don't think so. Indigo, I think I would be a terrible professor. I think I would be horrible at it. Because so many times I would just kind of throw my hands up halfway through the lesson and say something like, this is worthless anyway. But thank you. Lack of control, we also put at essentially a B. We still have ennui, so we were on ennui. Let's do ennui. Like, looking at that just makes me want to yawn. Ennui is pretty important to me, because when I don't feel motivated, when I don't feel like I can get into anything, that's a bad road. Right? That is a bad road. I mean, essentially it leads to depression. So I wouldn't say that I could put ennui above or even on the same level of depression. But I could maybe put it... Are we going to put everything on intermittent panic gasps for air? Again, I'm sorry for the flashes of light. Let's get that lined up nice. 28 pixels apart, exactly. Indigo, you don't know if you're in the right mental state for this. You might have to go. You'll be missed. See ya. Okay, we're not at the big ones yet, but we're at the Jordan Peterson. Failure. So fear of failure, right? Again, well, I'm not talking about a tangent, Indigo. I'm talking about throwing my hands up and walking out of the room. Don't think that'd be looked on favorably. So fear of failure. Now, whether this is like failure to provide, I know, like, everybody knows this Maggie Smith poem, right? About how we're all essentially kind of shady real estate brokers selling the world to our progeny. You could make this place beautiful. Maybe they think the place is already beautiful. Maybe they like a fixer-upper, right? Who knows? All right, I'm going to put ennui, although I'm going to put failure right up there with ennui. I don't know how I could put it any lower, but I don't think I could put it on the same level as depression. Jeff, failure haunts every waking moment. If you have control, little birdie, if you have control, you won't fail. I don't think that's so. We're being a little literal here in the way that we're looking at failure and lack of control. Higher. People are saying higher for failure. Higher than, I guess we could put it on depression. On this, I can't put it higher than depression. And I feel weird putting it on the same line as depression. Just because to me, like, one creates the other. Maybe depression needs to be haunts all the moments. I think I'm going to put depression. What this is going to give me sort of OCD. I'm going to put depression like there. How do you feel about that? And let's move on to pain. So pain is, by the way, AI generated. I think appropriate to have an AI generated representation of pain. So let's be sure that we know what we're talking about when we say pain, because we're talking about mental and physical pain and anguish. Indigo, I think, well, you weren't here when we were going over these more specifically. So I'm not talking about failure that you then remedy. I'm talking about terminal failure. So I would not say that terminal failure is an amazing part of life. Laura, pain, the thief of joy. You know what that is perfect. That is perfect, and it makes me wonder if thief of joy should have been B or C, or I'm sorry, A or B. Okay, let's put pain in thief as thief of joy, because obviously it is, right? Like if you're in pain, you can't do anything else, right? I guess I'm not clear now that these are in order of ascending seriousness. It's possible that thief of joy might be worse than intermittent panicked gasps for air. Dadity, you agree? Jeremiah, there are things in which we fail could be as bad as depression sometimes. Yeah, I'm talking about like failing, like I said, like failing to be a successful parent, failing to be a successful member of society. I'm not talking about failing to get an A on a test or failing to get a promotion at a job or even failing to get a job. This is probably true, but what else can you do in a tier list? You got to do. Maybe I need to sort of lean into the lack of control here and just be like, yeah, it's okay. It's okay if these things are not clear-cut lines. It's okay if depression is sitting there on a line between haunting all the moments and haunting all the waking moments. Okay, and now we're getting to the big dogs. So before we get to the big dogs, the big dogs are disease. I've always found viruses to be horrifying looking things. That's what an alien's going to look like. It's not going to look like a gray man. It's going to be just a vector for all kinds of nightmarish stuff. Disease, slow death, which of course slow death could be from disease, right? And then sudden death, meaning why the hell is this a symbol for love? That should be the symbol for a thunderclap heart attack. Slow death, immense decay. Let's do like a looks more like a Neanderthal. We need more space for that brain. Still looks pretty Neanderthalic. So, okay, yeah. Disease, slow death, sudden death. It's what Stephen King, literally, like, talk about something that haunts my dreams, like the phrase that he uses for a sudden heart attack was thunderclap heart attack. I have not been able to get that out of my head since the day that I read whatever book that was in. I think he probably uses it in multiple books. So, okay, we're going for the biggies. Romantic love is a disease. Love hurts. Yeah, I agree. It's like Guns N' Roses. Maddie, I hope you have a good night. I mean, romantic love serves a purpose. And it's fun, for lack of a better word. All right, so disease. The only thing about disease, here's the thing about disease. If you're the kind of person who wants to be able to have some warning when something's going to happen. So when we're talking about disease here, like we said, like we're going with the NOMA structure. So some of these things do overlap, right? So obviously disease can cause slow death. Disease can cause sudden death. But we're trying to look at these as distinctly different fears. So I would rate disease and and not all disease is terminal, right? But like this sort of idea, life is terminal, and often there is disease is the mechanism by which life is ended. I mean, it's either disease or avoidable violent death or something like that, right? I would probably put, like, when you're in the throes of disease, it might be different, but not being in the throes of disease, as far as I know, right? That there's an important caveat. I would say maybe here. Maybe intermittent panic gasps for air. Zoom into the tier list more. You can't read this. If I zoom in anymore, I think it's not gonna. Let's see if I can just fit on screen. There, that's as good as it's gonna get. It would be a thief of joy for you, B-Bear. I gotta put it higher than thief of joy. Because occasionally, for me, like, right, I definitely like think about it. I mean, we all just went through this 2 years of, I mean, insanity. Like, who could have imagined? Who could have imagined the way society was going to change in 2019? I still find it funny sometimes, like going back and looking at tweets or stories or posts from late 2019 talking about 2020, and just like that is a I mean, people are going to refer to before 2020 as pre-pandemic. Like, historically, that's going to be a thing. Indigo, no higher. All right, that's good. So then we're at the biggies. So here's the question, because we all know, like, death is the big one, right? And we're all afraid of death. In my opinion, we are all afraid of death, whether we admit it to ourselves or not. Would we rather yeah, well, I'm from Miami, so I sympathize with you. Would we rather die with some forewarning? Like when you think about like what is the best way to die, right? And a lot of people would say it is with absolutely no warning. I just go to sleep one night and I don't wake up. For me, that would be a terrible deal because I would just never want to go to bed. I'd be constantly afraid of going to sleep. And it's hard enough for me to go to bed already, honestly. Kate, 2019 was the best year you've ever lived. Well, how was your 2020? Jeremias, in your case, disease is the top of the tier list. Your condition of having... Okay. So do you have Crohn's disease? Is that what we're talking about there? Diverticulitis? You are being serious. I'm taking you at face value here. Yeah, this is sort of the... Jeff, this is sort of the catch-22 here. If you have that net, if you have, this net, you got that net. If everybody in this net is happy, well, that's fantastic. Like your smile's going to get even bigger. Extend that smile all the way up. You can jokerize that smile with no irony whatsoever. But, with great joy comes great responsibility. And you've just opened up your lows. So really, it's just a question of, so like for you, Jeff, like where would you fall there? Right? You have children. The least traumatic way to go would be with no warning whatsoever. Now, there's probably an argument to be made that might be the least traumatic way for your family as well. We're not talking about tomorrow, right? But we don't know when we're talking about. That's the other part. It's like, I guess if you could say, well, as long as my kids are, make it to maturity, then I'd be okay with. But that's, in a way, that's the presumption there is that you are precluded from needing to worry about the very entanglements that we're talking about that make this argument, or not this argument, this discussion nuanced, right? If we just say that, well, if I can have the proviso that it's after my kids move out or whatever it is, then I'd rather just go without knowing. Jeff, still suddenly and quickly. Yeah, I mean, so even if you have young kids and you are given a month to live, right? What a terrible, terrible month that would be. I don't know. I'm trying to think of a benefit. So we're not talking about extending your time. So either way, you're dying at the same time. Do you want forewarning of it or do you not want forewarning of it? I do think that now this is ironic. What's going to happen here is I almost feel like sudden death is going to be maybe thief of joy or dull ache, and then slow death will be haunts all the moments. I think I would feel comfortable doing this easy. Like, what's higher than that? Right? And then sudden death, that's a lightning bolt, by the way, going through there. I don't know if that's clear. It was a lightning bolt. And then sudden death, I don't know, man. I still get horribly terrified by it. So for me, I guess it would still be something like that. But lower than maybe I was thinking before going through this exercise. Sudden death at or near the bottom. Kate, your father died while being sick. Better than waking up and your father's just suddenly gone. Like, you got a chance to say goodbye, right? Like, that is something to take into account too. But I don't know. I feel like, remember, this is like how you think about this stuff in your day to day, right? So how do you think about it in your day to day? Well, by this logic, yeah, Indigo, we're all just dying a slow death. With just a little extra precipice at the bottom. Sudden death scares you more than disease, little birdie. Yeah. I guess that would be, well, there we go. It's a little bit more than disease. Death isn't even a thought during your day-to-day life, Lexi. Wow. What must that be like? I would, like, occasionally I will have a day where I don't think much about it. But I don't think I ever have a day where I don't think about it at all. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought I was showing this. How do we feel about this? Slow death haunts all the moments. Depression is straddling the line between haunts all the moments and haunts every waking moment. Failure haunts every waking moment. Sudden death straddles the line between haunts every waking moment and intermittent panic gasps for air. Disease, ennui, lack of control, vengeful God, all intermittent panic gasps for air. Pain is the thief of joy. That one, perfect. Because Laura, who said that, right? Or Amy? And avoidable death is a dull ache. This isn't saying like what you'd like to experience. This is like in your day-to-day life, how do these things factor in right now? Sudden death is better because you'll feel no pain, puppy. You don't necessarily feel pain with all slow deaths, right? And I mean, it depends what you mean by sudden, right? I mean, I'm calling a heart attack sudden, and you definitely feel a lot of pain, I think, if you have a heart attack. Some of it comes down to like how much you inconvenience others with that pain, how well known it is. For all we know, like we scream when we're under anesthetic, undergoing surgical procedures, and have no knowledge of it. And then we get the question of, well, if you have no memory of an event, did it happen? Does it matter? If you were going into surgery and you were being told you are going to feel this and it is going to be extraordinarily painful, but when you wake up, you'll have no memory of that pain. I think very few of us would be comfortable saying, all right, fine, then do it. But for all we know, that's happened to every one of us. Well, if you've had surgery. Forgetting is powerful. Oh boy. Indigo, you're going to watch Bluey to be happy again. Yeah, you're right. This has gotten dark. I don't know what Bluey is. Stig, you feel like depression is as high as slow death. I mean, it's close. It's close. Kit, yeah, you're right. I mean, we do have to, Stacy, have a good night. We have to like make some presumptions about these. I mean, we could back and forth with it and say like, well, if it's 2 hours of pain, then that constitutes sudden. But if it's 2 hours and 1 minute, that's slow. Ava, you agree with Stig. Depression is as high as slow death. I mean, I have it there very close. Is it enough to knock it up? Does depression haunt all your moments? Even your sleeping moments? Do you have to worry about your browser history? Depression is such a major part of your everyday life that talking about this list does not impact your mental and emotional health whatsoever. You're numb. Yeah, I mean, I would hope that if this is negatively affecting your mental health, that you would not be listening to it or watching it. All right, let's do it. Let's do that. I'm okay with that. See, you all don't know, but I actually put it like 1 pixel below. Kate, you're scared you'll die where your kids are in need of you. Yep. You're 18, not a mother, and you're worried about that now? Very precocious. I have that fear. I had that fear ever since I had a child. I had like a worse fear of like dying in front of them. Scarring them in that way. It's a bad one. Jeff, your view of death was informed by your grandfather. He died recently at 90. Oh, that's right. I remember this. Sorry about that. When people said something about God, he would say, God must have forgotten about me. He was tired and didn't understand why, if there was a God, he had to still be alive. So he felt like he had been forgotten, as in like left alive too long. There are people who recover from depression for periods of time. I mean, everything is a finite period of time when we're talking about like a human life, right? So if you can manage to not be depressed, I guess my litmus is if you can be not depressed for as much time as you are depressed, then you've won. He survived 2 wives and all his siblings. Yeah, I could see where that would, like, once your cohort, your generation, your cohort starts to disappear, like you get these friends from high school that I know that have died, or even before, Um, I mean, and I remember these stages. Like I remember when I turned 22 or 23, started going to all these weddings. Then at like 27, 28, started going to all these second weddings. A lot of divorces. And then, the older you get, then you start going to like your friends' parents' funerals. And then you start going to your cohorts' funerals. That has to be terrifying. Like, I mean, I feel this more and more every day, right? Like you look around and you don't really feel a kinship to the people around you. You feel something, but it's you begin to feel more and more like an outsider. Mitchell, you remember your grandfather passed. The thing that struck you as terrifying, his fear of being forgotten. See, we're all going to be forgotten. This is something that I don't know, right? Like I still hopefully have some time. My view on this may change. But I don't really like Paul McCartney, right? He's going to be remembered for a while. In the grand scheme of things, like he's going to be remembered by our litmus, by the litmus that we use to judge time, which is our own lives. He's going to be remembered for a long time. By any other litmus, he's not going to be remembered. So does that really matter, right? Like, and that tale is so short. Like even, you're like, what do you know about your great grandparents? Most of us don't know much about our great grandparents. Some of us don't know that much about our grandparents, right? B-Bear, what do I think about immortality? If I was immortal, I would be even lazier than I am now. I mean, I feel like, right, like time and death give meaning. No, I want to live forever. Forget it. Forget I said that. Here's what I want to do. I want to live as long as I want to live. That's what I want. I want to be immortal until such time that I choose to not be immortal anymore. That'd be great. And I don't want to choose to not be immortal because things have become so bad for me. Like I've deteriorated physically. Like I want to be, look, I am not the person I was 30 years ago. 30 years ago, things were very, very different. I'm talking about physically, right? The way that I felt every morning, so different. The way that I looked at time was so different. The way that I was able to experience like a lazy day of not doing anything and not feel bad about it. When time was so abundant that you could spend it, blithely. I'd like to be a Time Lord, sure. Maybe a Time Lord. B-Bear, you don't think you could stand seeing everyone you cared about die. But the thing is, you make new connections. So as long as humanity exists, you make new connections, right? And yeah, you might start to get used to the fact that, well, I mean, you've seen this dramatized, right? And like, even Interview with a Vampire, there's talk about how depressing it is to have your loved ones grow old and die while you, Dracula, right? While you remain forever young. Yeah, I've been following that crazy dude, that crazy billionaire who thinks he looks 18, who does not look 18. He totally looks like he looks maybe 5 years younger than he is. But there are plenty of people who, like, just through a fluke of genetics, don't do shit and they look 10 years younger than they are. But that guy's a hoot. There was a tweet a couple days ago that said he died as a joke, right? I don't usually think jokes about people dying are funny, but I did think in his case it was funny. I'm going to live forever. He dies the next day. Well, yeah, well, Mitchell, then at that point, I would then choose to not be immortal anymore. I don't think I would go that long. For some reason, I'm thinking 1,000 years would be about right. I think that's the sweet spot for me. I need a millennia. I need an eon. I don't need, I don't need to see the next, what supplants us as the next sentient creature. Godric. I remember Godric. That was very, very, very close to Antonio Banderas' character. I forget his name in interview. But I think that we've got this is a good list. Depression and slow death. Those are the top tier existential threats, or not threats, things that we think about on the reg. The biggest fear you have is your TV show ending. Well, at some point, that will change, Kate. All right. Well, thank you for joining me in this endeavor. It's a little. It's difficult to quantify. Like it's not. I don't feel 100% happy with it. I feel 90% happy with it. Maybe I shouldn't feel happy with it. Maybe that's the point. Why should you be happy with realizing what your greatest fears are? Like, well, what does this buy us? What do we get from this? Fuck all. We get fuck all. Cool. Well, hopefully I'll see you again sometime. Hopefully I have more time. And hopefully you have more time. Hopefully you have more time than I do. Have a good Friday. Good night.